In this video, I'm going to show you how to record a credit card transaction that is open for processing. You're first going to start by signing in using your Blackbaud profile login that you've created. Once you sign in, you can navigate to the Expenses and Manage Expenses tab. Alternatively, if you don't land on a page that looks anything like this, there should at least be a little menu button here in the corner, and you're going to click that and select Financial Edge NXT. Once you select that, like I mentioned before, you can select Expenses and Manage Expenses. Here we're going to look at this entire page and notice that there is a little alert icon here that basically is saying there's something that requires your attention. And so I'm going to click on the number itself to code some transactions that have been created from our bank account. These transactions are credit card transactions that you've incurred, and they are not something you have to manually enter. They automatically come in from our credit card company. So first, I want to point to the fact that you can hit this refresh button if you ever need to. This will refresh the feed, and that means that there may be a transaction that you've incurred but you don't see it yet. That could be likely because you've not refreshed the feed in a few days. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Before I get into the deep end of this, I want to mention that there are two deadlines you need to know about. On the 2nd of the month, you need to have already submitted all your credit card charges to your supervisor for approval, and that means completing this entire process that I'm about to show you by the 2nd. Supervisors need to have the credit card charges approved by the 3rd of the month, referring to the previous month. So if you are completing your credit card charges, you can tell that it's a tight deadline, and the best way to prevent yourself from getting caught up at the end of the month is to do this on an ongoing basis. So here I'm going to go ahead and dive into the detail, and I'm going to sort this list so that I have my oldest transaction first. I'm going to go here and I'm going to start with the vendor. The vendor will always be Regions Bank credit card. It will never be any vendor besides that. Next is the description. This is the overarching description for the purchase. So I'm just going to say supplies and food for Verge night as an example. This is the overarching description, as I mentioned, for the transaction. Next, I'm going to select the approval rule. And so the approval rule tells the system where you want this transaction to go for approval. So I'm going to select Andrew Moffett since I'm using Sam's account currently. This section here is the expense detail and purpose section. This is an area where you can communicate important details about the transaction to the person approving it. Now, I should mention that I have sent out a Blackbaud tips spread, or rather Word document, and I would refer to that when deciding where to send a transaction for approval. You might have a role that incurs charges or purchases for multiple different ministries, and so where you might send one transaction for approval to for one ministry might not be the same for the next. So I'd encourage you to refer to that. If you don't have access to that, please send me an email and I can get that to you. Next is the distribution section. This is really some of the most important parts, so please focus on these details. The expense category, there's only one, so you're just going to select that. I won't go into detail as to why, but simply put, you only need to select that one and only category. Next, you're going to put the line item description, and in this case, this is a pretty general expense. I don't need to break it out line by line, so I'm just going to copy and paste the description from up here, and I'm going to paste it down here into this description. You'll notice that once I selected that expense category, I then had this little space down here pop up, and this is where we can enter the actual account string that we're going to be using, or the account code. So for this particular purchase, this is just general supplies and things like that. So I'll be using the student ministry supplies account. And this is going to be a Crown Point expense, so I'll charge it to the Crown Point account. Again, you can tell this is student ministry because of the department code, and you can tell this is Crown Point because of the location code. Lastly is the supplies account, which is $71.90. You can search for any account that you're looking for by either typing the name of the account or the account code itself. So I could have typed in 7190 and it would pull up all the 7190 accounts. Or I could have just typed in CL and it'll pull up all the CL accounts. Now, if you have a long list of accounts that you have access to, you won't be able to see all of them. So you're going to have to give the system a little bit more information than that. So the best way to do that is to begin typing the department name followed by the account. That's how these accounts are designed to be named. It's a conjunction of the department code or the department name and the natural account code. So again, I'm going to type in student ministry supplies and I will select the student ministry supplies account for Crown Point. The project code is something that is a required field, even though there's not an asterisk at the moment. And the project code is something that your department head would have established based on a particular expense. So if you have an event that you're trying to track data for each year, this would be the space that you put that project code in. If you do not have a project code that applies to this expense, you're simply going to put the general project code. Next, if you select Add Expense Category, this would give you a whole new line so that you could provide more line item detail. Maybe you incurred a purchase that it costs like $400. There's likely a couple of things that are going to be charged to different accounts. And so this is an opportunity, or this provides you an opportunity to provide separate descriptions for separate accounts that are being charged. Alternatively, if you were to select Add Account Distribution, you would be using the same description for the extra account that you add. So it may make more sense to do the Add Expense category. Use your discretion here. If there's a situation where you need to provide a different description for a different part of the purchase, go ahead and use Add Expense category. Next is the payment type. You're just going to select Payment Type Not Applicable. And for mailing check to vendor, you're going to select no. These two fields are irrelevant for the credit card transaction process. So if I wanted to attach a receipt here, I could. I would just navigate to the section on my computer that I have the file at, and I would go ahead and hit open. After I've attached a receipt, the system will allow me to hit the submit button, or if I didn't want to submit this, I wanted to finish it later, I could hit save draft. Many people are choosing to take photos on their phone, and they are completing the data entry on the computer. So what people will do is they'll complete all this as I just have, they'll save it as a draft, and then they'll log into the website on their phone. And then they will upload the receipt from their phone's photo album. That's sometimes an easier way so that you're not trying to do so much typing on your phone. Lastly, I just want to reiterate the deadlines for the credit card transactions. Again, you must have this process complete for each of these transactions by the 2nd. So in this case, we're looking at March. And so on April 2nd, I should have submitted all these transactions to my supervisor for approval. Again, I encourage you to not wait until that point to submit these. Do these in an ongoing basis. Lastly, supervisors, you are to approve all your transactions by the 3rd. This helps us in closing the month out for reports. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be glad to help you out. Thanks so much.